Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by the X-Men. Wait, shouldn't that be X-People? Come on now, Xavier, smash the patriarchy! Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Slurm Zero. All the addiction without the taste. Welcome everyone to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I'm Todd.
And today we are still filmmakers, writers. We perform in front of the camera, work a lot behind the camera, post-production. I and Todd do it all. But we are joined by a very special guest today. We are joined by the photographer, Hannah Hartman. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is like a very much first for me. So I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about is you recently made the jump from corporate world. You've had a pretty good career going in corporate, but you decided to go full-time as a creative, as a photographer, as your full-time job. I'd like to hear how hard was that decision to make, and what propelled you to do it, along with how's it going?
Yeah. I actually have been doing photography alongside different jobs that I've had probably since before I even graduated college, really, I guess is the timeline on that. So since maybe 2017, 18. And so going full time was something I wanted to do for a while. I think I stayed in safe places because I had health insurance and all the things like the benefits from jobs like that in marketing. And it just became, my most recent position became really toxic, and I realized like how unhappy I was. And so the time came for me to part ways, and the very natural next step for me was just to go full time. So I've been wanting to do it for a while, so it wasn't a hard decision to make. It's been a hard journey. It's challenging to work for yourself after not doing that, but I kind of just reverted back to college days and that like time management and discipline, and just having an opportunity to be creative and tell stories and help people kind of showcase their love or their the important moments in time and all their life. And I love it. So
now did you plan for it, or did you just wake up one day and say, that's it, I'm out, peace? You know, like did you have clients in the till, or did you just go for it?
So I had some clients, yes. Cool. But mostly I kind of went for it. I'd been planning to move into another position in the same industry, and I just decided not to go that route. And when the day came for me to leave that position that I had, I just did it. Just did it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I hated that position for a hot minute. So it was coming, but I didn't decide that freelance was going to be my next path forward until I did. And it was kind of jumping off and doing it. And yeah, it was scary. It was pretty scary. I've definitely learned a lot about myself in the last couple months.
How's it been just, finding projects and, engaging new clients, trying to build out your roster? How's that whole process been for you?
It's been good. It's challenging to kind of branch out from where I live, which is what I really want to be doing. That's probably been the most challenging part. But I still am working with some local community efforts. And so I'm doing some marketing work for them. So anything that I'm not, like any momentum that I don't necessarily have with photography that I'm still working to build, I am supplementing that with other projects because I'm pretty involved in the community. My last job had me laced into a lot of that. And I stayed in those board positions and kind of stayed involved. And so I've been working with some of those nonprofits and community organizations as a contracted employee or board member. So anything that's kind of slow, it doesn't really affect me financially. I have allowed myself room to supplement so that I can continue to try to grow. I'm about to lease a studio space in the downtown of the city that I live in. So I'm looking to try to market that and get some studio clients who have.
That's huge.
Yeah.
A studio?
Yeah. It's going to be, it's pretty big for just me. So it'll be a shared space with photographers. And then I'll be able to sublet it out and kind of lease it out to other creatives and utilize the space how they choose to when I'm not in there. So,
are you going to buy it?
Oh, no, just renting it for now. So
Renting it and then subletting it?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Which they're allowing us to do that, which is awesome. They're allowing us a lot of flexibility for the space that we have, and it's fairly inexpensive. So I'm super excited. It's all new journeys.
I have so many questions, but I'm just going to boil it down to one real quick. As a professional, I think one of the questions in 2023, I think that everybody's asking, like all creatives, is what they think of AI and how that impacts, what you do and how you see it. Do you see it as a tool, or do you see it as something that limits you or hinders you, or whatever? Like, how do you see AI?
I think a lot of people are afraid of AI, but I see it as a tool. And also, I think humans will always crave human interaction. I don't think there's much that you can do as an AI to replace what happens when humans connect with each other in a very intimate space. And that's kind of what I want to create with my work and what I do. And I don't think any AI could ever take that over from me. So if I have to stay at a small scale in order to provide that, as long as I'm making a living and I'm happy, then I'm good with it. But AI, as far as a tool, there's a lot of advancements that even just in post-production that I've seen as beneficial. So as that continues to develop, hopefully it takes away in some capacity when people start to alter images to this unrealistic version of what has actually been captured. I have no interest in work like that. And I feel like clients who also don't have that interest will be the ones that find me and I find them.
I love that. What a great answer.
Thank you.
It's so good. I think the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is you've done for a couple of years work with the Macon Film Festival.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear about that. What do you do? What's your involvement? And then, of course, what advice you have to filmmakers and what you've learned, from that experience.
Yeah. I've been on the board with them this is my second year. So advice for filmmakers, I was trying to think of, like, do I have anything?
Yeah, right.
My involvement really is making sure the festival helping to make sure the festival runs smoothly and that the community knows we're hosting it. We have a little bit of an issue locally of like people in the community really getting involved in things like this. It's the 18th year though, and we've been around for a while. It's a great festival, independent films. We also do full dome. This year we're having to postpone it because we're replacing the entire screen for that. So it'll be great because in October it's going to be a brand new screen. But for now, it's kind of came as a last minute change. And we host like immersive films in the planetarium. And so that's a very unique thing that a lot of local film festivals around here don't really offer. But we have people from all over the place, internationally, all over the US submit to our festival. And I think what I've noticed in my role is filmmakers who market their own work and really stand behind it and follow through, like when they have made that submission and they've gone through the work of actually producing and making this film, and then you go and submit it. And there's really no follow through. There's no like online presence for your film. There's no real like marketing effort behind your film. It makes it a lot harder for people on this end to really do a good job in showcasing it. So like anything that you can piece together, any kind of media kit, any kind of like press kit, any sort of like release, all the information that you can possibly give when you're submitting to festivals, the more the better. I've noticed.
So that makes a pretty big impact on acceptance rates, from your perspective? Not
necessarily whether or not they're going to get into the festival, but how easy it is for us to showcase their film. When we're having to, look at spending time crafting social media posts or reaching out to people who are writing articles about the festival, and those films that have all of that media that we can send out, they're the ones that will typically get featured, or they're the ones that we're going to be posting sooner because we actually have the materials for. So we've had some filmmakers who kind of slack on that a little bit, and who knows the reason why. But the more you can give about your film, the more passionate you come across to like showcasing your film, the better it is for how we're able to talk about it and share it and showcase it. Other than that, I think passion really drives these projects. I've noticed in our screeners feedback, they love to see like when a filmmaker presents that final project and they have the synopsis and they have their bio and they have all the important things about like why they wanted to do this film and why they wanted to talk about this subject. I think we've had a really wide range of projects come across. Some that are quality is key. Please produce like a good quality picture. Definitely don't submit the things that are recorded that clearly probably were recorded on your phone. Please like step it up at least like one more notch. We've had those. But for us, we're welcoming to a lot of different types of films, different subject matter, different topics. It's cool for me to be in this small town in the middle of Georgia and see the types of films that we have come into this, and a lot of people come out and support those. It's cool. Yeah, filmmakers, I don't really have a whole lot of advice other than just do what you love with passion and make sure that translates when you're putting yourself out there.
Nice. Very cool. Speaking of films, Todd, what are we doing today, man?
Oh man. So today we are doing Barbie. So if you haven't seen this film, please pause the episode, go to theater and watch it. It's still in the theaters. It'll probably be in the theaters for like another 6 months or something, for all I know. But please pause it because we're going to be giving a lot of spoilers away. So
yeah, we'll look at a bunch of stuff. Definitely want to look at some of the cinematography, a lot about the story and writing, pop culture references, Ken, Ruth, Gloria, Sasha, all that. Performances we'll look at a little bit, as well as some of the set design and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. Barbie suffers a crisis that leads her to question her world and her existence. It's directed by Greta Gerwig, written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, cinematography by Rodrigo Prieto. It's featuring Margot Robbie as stereotypical Barbie, Ryan Gosling as Ken, Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie, America Ferrera as Gloria, Ariana Greenblatt as Sasha, and Michael Cera as Allan.
Oh, looks like this beach was a little too much beach for you, Ken.
If I wasn't severely injured, I would beat you off right now, Ken.
I'll beach off with you any day, Ken.
Hold my ice cream, Ken. All right, Ken, you're on. Let's beach off.
Anyone who wants to beach him off has to beach me off first.
I will beach both of you off at the same time.
But you don't even know how to beach yourself off. How are you going to beach both of
of
us
course
off?
I
It
know how
doesn't
to-
make sense.
Ken?
You
Why are
can
you
beach
getting
yourself
emotional?
off. You're going to beach
Come
both
on,
of us off.
beach.
Nobody's gonna beach anyone off.
That's it. That's the clip. I love it.
There weren't that many
Perfect.
options. There's so many other great clips that would be, more appropriate, but that was the only one that wasn't just, music. And so I'd like to start with Todd. So I'm curious, one, what your history is with Barbie. Like, you grew up, with a sister. And so I don't know where Barbie's around the house. Did you ever play with them? As well as current relationship with Barbie, like you have a daughter. And I'd be curious, what's going on there, if anything, as well as, what'd you think of the film?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the first part, my history with Barbie. I mean, yeah, I grew up, I have a sister and she was into Barbies and all that stuff and dolls. And this is back, in the 80s, late 80s and probably into early 90s. I actually had Kens. I had a couple of Kens. And yeah, I mean, so yeah, I have history with the dolls.
Yeah.
And now I have a daughter, and I mean, she has not really been into Barbie. She's more into like the American Girl dolls or whatever that are like they're bigger and they're I don't know, they're more like doll-esque, I guess, like that you can hold and everything. And and I always liked that because I mean they're more expensive and by a lot, but I always liked that because they promote like a lot of like she has a lot of different colored dolls. She has a lot of different versions of those, and I know that Barbie has that too. But it was just like I don't know, she was just into that. So less Barbie nowadays. I think she's had a couple, but when she was like little, she had a couple, but wasn't a whole lot. About the film, I mean, I loved it. I don't know what to say. Like it was, to me, it was fantastic. It was funny and fun the whole time. There were only a couple of references. I saw it with my kids and my wife and a few other people, and there were only a couple of references that I felt a little bit like, wasn't really comfortable having my 7-year-old, hearing that or whatever. Like there was one scene where they're in the real world and they go and they talk to the construction workers, and Barbie says, well, he doesn't have a penis and I don't have a vagina. I don't have a problem with those words at all, but I just don't want to introduce that to my daughter right now, So, but it was just like the way that it was delivered was very, innocent and very matter of fact, so it wasn't like belabored, like, hey, this is a moment. It was just like, this is a line. And then we move on with the film. And so I was okay with it.
Ken's reaction to that too, by the way. He's just like, ugh, what are you doing? Not in front of them.
Yeah.
I have all the genitals.
Yeah, I have all the that's right. It's so good. So anyway, but there were some really wonderful moments too in the film. I mean, my favorite moment the entire time of the entire film was when Barbie sits down at the bus stop next to the old lady, and she says, "You're beautiful." The old lady says, "I know it." I mean, I almost started crying in that moment, and my wife did. She cries at everything all the time. So she instantly burst into tears, and I was like on the verge of it. To me, that was the whole movie. That one interaction, that one line said everything. How I would pose this question for anybody who goes in to watch this film and maybe has some idea, or like even watches it and then leaves with an opinion, because I think everybody has opinions and everybody's entitled to them. Maybe this is, very anti-man or whatever. Like, I think people can have their opinion. What I would say is, how would you make a movie about Barbie? Like, really, like, let me ask you that question. What kind of movie would you make if you were making a Barbie movie? Because to me, this is a perfect version of this. To me, this is bringing up all the things that people have thought and maybe said, or maybe not even thought, but has been, in conversations for the last at least, 15, 20 years, maybe not in the 80s, but at least now, in recent times, and called it out, put it out there in front of your face, said it in the lines, in the dialogue, and either made fun of it or just called it out for what it is, and then, and even if it's just for a moment, they've addressed it and then they move on. The things that belabor is the wrong term, but the things that they focus on are the things that are more vital, more important, and that would be more effective for an overall script and focus of the film. And I mean, that image is a huge aspect that they address in this film, that they focus on a lot, and as they should. I love these moments of the one moment where they break the fourth wall and they have the narrator come in and say, Margot Robbie is, just for clarification, Margot Robbie is not the right person to cast to look bad at any moment in this film, or something. They say something like that. So anyway, I absolutely adored it. I don't want to go on a soapbox because I want to hear from Hannah. I want to hear from you, Wes. I thought that probably 95% of it was fantastic. There were a few moments where I was taken out of it. I thought that and Jenny, my wife, agreed. I thought that the monologue that the mom did was kind of weak and didn't really I mean, the whole rest of the film was so smart and so like thought out and had double meaning that I felt like I wanted that from a monologue. If there was a monologue that was going to happen, which I feel like this movie needed, I feel like it needed that moment. I just felt a little bit, I don't know if it was performance or if it was the writing. I'm not sure. Knowing Greta Gerwig, it was probably the performance because the writing is always like top notch. So I'm just sitting there watching this and I'm thinking, they probably could have gotten a better performance from her because she's a great actress. And I just was taken out of it a lot during that. But other than that, I thought everything else was so fun. And you never knew what the next line was going to be about or bring or like, you know, what they were going to relate to the real world, you know, from the Barbie world. Like it was just a lot of fun. The addition of Allan in there was fantastic. So yeah, I loved the filmmaking. I loved the writing, the acting. Everything was just so much fun.
Hannah, same. Did you grow up, I don't know, with Barbie or the equivalent, or was that just like campfire fodder for you? And like, yeah, what did you think of the film? Because you reached out to me and said, "Hey, please, can I jump into this conversation?" And so, yeah, I'm dying to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna struggle to keep this tight.
Sure.
So I'm gonna try, and then maybe we'll just come back to different points. I did grow up with Barbie. I also grew up with American Girl dolls. So I grew up with a lot of dolls. And I grew up with sisters. So I was the second of 7 siblings, and 5 of us are girls, 2 of us are boys. So there was a lot of Barbie energy. I also had friends who loved Barbie. And
so you had a lot of weird Barbies in the stock.
I had at least a few weird Barbies for sure. I don't know if they were that weird though. I think that they were maybe like they were valiant effort Barbies. Like they had a semi decent haircut. It wasn't quite terrible, but you know, I might just be blocking those out, like trauma blocking them out. They're probably somewhere in the back of my head. They did exist. But I did have Barbies, and I was talking to a friend of mine about like the idea of being a girl and like having that playtime almost, and how like girls as they grow are kind of pushed a little bit sooner to grow out of the like playtime era of their life. Like that's not their hobbies and their crafts and their things that when they're adults, they look pretty different than when they were younger. And one of those being like dolls. And not that I have any desire to play with dolls as an adult, but I think that just the energy behind playing with dolls and like what that was, there's so many layers to that I would love to unpack. But I kind of grew out of dolls in an interesting way as I was thinking about this, because I liked Barbies, but there was just something that was there. I had like a disconnect, and I don't know if it was too materialistic. I wasn't like a very materialistic kid. I started to gravitate more towards animals and an interest in like safari and nature, and I wanted to be a vet and all of these things. And so I kind of leaned away from that girly girl, which that's a whole thing. But, you know, you're either a girly girl or you're a tomboy. And there's no like in between when you're growing up. And I think that's crazy. But I was not a girly girl. And so I was tomboy. So there was almost this natural reaction for me to kind of like lean away from that and not play with the dolls, and that just wasn't part of my childhood anymore. I still had friends who played with dolls when I wasn't, and I kind of just lost an interest in that, and I never really thought about it until this movie. But then I also think watching this has like sparked part of me being a queer person and having that almost anti-hyper feminine like concept within me, somewhere buried deep within, like you can't be queer and also be hyper feminine, because if you're too feminine, then you're not queer enough. And then all of those layers kind of unpacked as I was watching this and thinking about when it was that I stopped playing with Barbies and why I stopped playing with Barbie. So this film has a lot of significance to me and importance to me, that I think it hits different people in different ways. It hits parents in different ways, and it hits somebody like me who's not a parent. But I am an aunt, and I grew up with siblings, and I know the struggle as a young person, however you grew up, to like find yourself and what that like journey looks like in the era of Barbie, in the age of Barbie. And yeah, the monologue, I agree with you, Todd, on that it kind of lost me a little bit. But I've also seen so many people talk about that was like one of the most impactful parts of the film. And I think it's largely because a lot of people went into it expecting something very light and very like, they didn't quite know what to expect. And so going into it, the people who I think weren't expecting it to hit as hard, that monologue really resonated with them, because they weren't looking necessarily for the double meanings and kind of like the buried messages. And so that very direct, like blunt monologue that didn't quite have as much to carry it, I think it hit the right audience. Everything about the film hit different people in different ways. And I loved it. I loved every bit of it. The anti-man thing, it's just as much for men as it is for women, this film, in my opinion. 1,000%.
Couldn't agree more.
I loved it. Yeah, I'll stop rambling now so we can ramble more later.
Okay, cool. Couldn't agree more.
We stopped so we can start later. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, same. I grew up with a sister, and she had, her share of Barbie dolls and all kinds of stuffed animals and dolls, and I played with all of them. I didn't care. I was always that weird person, I guess, that I just liked what I liked, and I was never going to be the person who was going to act like I didn't like what I liked. Yeah. And so for me, and I got shit with, my whole childhood, it was just me getting shit for being myself. And so like playing with a doll for whatever, a day, or playing with my friends, my, little female friends, as we play house or whatever, I didn't care. It was all fun for me. Because as it's no secret now, like imagination is so cool. Kind of like what you were saying, Hannah. It's like play, you do so much with play. You get to experience so many things and so many ideas. And that was all part and parcel for me. We certainly had a lot of weird Barbies, because as much as that part was, me, I was also still a boy, a boy's boy. And all that, male energy was channeled straight into some of those weird Barbies where firecrackers galore. I was going to blow them up, melt them. Like we had so many weird Barbies.
You were Sid from Toy Story.
Yes, absolutely. I was a destructive little force as well. And so, yeah, walking into this, I didn't know what to expect. I definitely expected something unexpected, like going into, if this were any other filmmaker going into a toy-based film, I would have been like, no way in hell am I ever going to go watch whatever G.I. Joe, right? Because I know what that is without even having to watch the trailer. But because I knew Greta Gerwig was directing this, I was like, of course I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch everything Greta Gerwig makes. We've made it no secret on this podcast that we think she can make pretty much every film better. That's our
Star Wars.
Theory.
Please, Greta, do the next Star Wars.
My God. And so watching this, I knew this was going to be headsy. I didn't know what level of play versus, wit and thought that balance was going to be like. And I definitely didn't come in expecting like an interesting patriarchal, conversation. I think I expected a lot of conversation about, womanhood and maybe some concept of coming of age and what does it mean to be a woman today. All that stuff I expected, but the layers that she came in with, I was like, oh, this is cool, because it's thoughtful. that's the other cool thing about someone like her, especially writing with, Noah Baumbach, because they're just really smart, sharp people, and they're not going to, I don't know, kowtow to anyone. Like, they're not interested in necessarily being on any particular side. They always come off as interested in just reality. What is reality? What's the best way that we can talk about it and acknowledge all the various, aspects of any given subject or idea? I mean, go watch Little Women, go watch Lady Bird. And these are very complex people, even though those are still heavily, centered on women. They don't do short shrift to the guys in there, and the guys play a specific part. And she's just not afraid to let something be what it is. There's a character in Lady Bird who's a dude and who's an ass. And she's not afraid to let a teenage boy be an ass. Just because, she's a woman writing for a male character doesn't mean she's going to shy away from calling a thing a thing. And that's the kind of stuff that I really respect. And it's hard in today's culture to step aside and say, okay, I'm a guy, Wes, who writes a lot of women characters. I could not do that and be kind of a dishonest storyteller, or I could do that and do it in a way that I think represents whatever, like a person. Because also, at some point I expect she's going to make something that isn't heavily woman-centered, and she's going to do a great job at that too, because she's just thoughtful in all these ways. And so coming in, I didn't know what to expect. Walking away, I was like, that was a lot of fun. It's big humor, a lot of silliness. I don't think that was what I fully expected was the style, because this was a very different style that she hasn't played with before. Pun not intended there. But just to see her play with, big comedy and childish humor, and it was impossible. This is an impossible movie to make. Like, if you sit and think about all the things that she had to do, right? Make it appeal to kids, but smart enough for adults. Make sure the jokes work for kids and for a broad audience, and are edgy, but not overly edgy and obvious to kids, but with layers of wit for the nerds, right? Proust, I'll come back to that. Make it empowering, but make it fun and kitschy, and throw in some musical numbers, and throw in something for guys. Let's not make sure, that the little boys who show up don't have anything for them. And make sure it all works seamlessly in a narrative that runs short enough for a kid to sit through and do all of that completely evenly for 90, 100 minutes, so that nobody gets bored in the process.
That's the monologue.
Right? Like, it's an impossible task that she had in front of her, and to walk away with what she did is mind-numbing. Like, I just cannot believe she pulled this off the way she did. And yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you actually about the monologue. The impossible to be a woman monologue is the way I labeled it. Because sitting and listening to it, at first I was like, yeah. And then there's a couple of lines where I'm like, I don't know about that. Because maybe it's not all objectively true, right? There's this line in there where everything is your fault. That's not the point, because it feels true. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. A lot of what Gloria is saying, right, is actually fairly universal. Like, I feel like I have to be perfect all the time. I can't say how I really feel or really get upset, because if I do, then you won't talk to me anymore, or you won't fight through it. You won't stick around and deal with it. I feel like I can't make any mistakes. That's so universal, and that's okay. But the target audience here is what really you have to circle back to and remember, because that really does matter here. This is aimed at women, and it's talking about the experience of being a woman in modern society from the perspective. And that's okay. I can sit and listen to someone else's experience. And for the most part, like, there are certainly some women that, listen to that and was like, okay, I don't know if that fits with the rest of the movie. Whether or not she's saying may not be the most pertinent part of that or not, I don't know. But if you actually just sit in the audience and listen and look around, you'll see and hear a lot of nodding and agreements. Like, that's like some dude getting his ribs bruised, right? And that's okay. Like, I think I can live with that, you know, having a moment of just frustration, because we all have that. That's the universal aspect. And Greta knowing that she's writing for a specific audience and probably just writing how she feels. Why not? Just freaking go for it. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting moment. But for me, the best parts were probably all the other stuff around it. And I'll certainly come back to that. But the music I thought was also pretty cool. For one, dropping in Tame Impala out of nowhere was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
What?
Agreed.
Okay. That struck me as like, as a director, sometimes you get to make a wish list of who do I want to work with? Who do I want to cast? Who's going to light it? Rodrigo Prieto, like shooting this is probably like a dream. I don't know that there was a lot for him to actually do in this.
Like yeah, just light everything equal. No like, shadows.
To me, this is more of a set designer's dream, necessarily than a cinematographer's dream. But not to say that he didn't put his touch on it, but it's big box, right? This is a big box movie, so to speak. And so, yeah, I don't know. The music, good musical numbers. Did y'all have any big reactions to like Dance the Night Away scene or any of that? Like Ken gets his own big dance number. I thought that was pretty fun.
That was probably my favorite part.
Really?
I unashamedly listened to that song like in the shower.
I love it.
I love that song.
I mean, I adore the Billie Eilish song. I mean, I listen to it on repeat. It's absolutely brilliant. That Billie Eilish and her brother are some of the best songwriters in the last 20 years, 30 years, like really unbelievable. I know Greta went to her and said, I want this to be a theme song for Barbie, a love song for Barbie. And it absolutely is. I mean, if you listen to the lyrics, they're unbelievably perfect. And her melody is so delicate and gorgeous. It's flawless. And I knew it was her the second I heard it at the end. Even though I didn't even know that she did a song for it. But when I heard it, I was like, that's Billie. I've been in love with Billie Eilish for like a long time. And I loved that. But the music throughout I thought was fantastic. The use of, you know, kind of like older songs, not that old, but,
right.
Older songs. And like you said, it felt like Greta just made a playlist and said, we're going to throw all of these in the movie wherever I feel like I want to put it. And that's what happened. Why not? You know?
Absolutely. And it's impressive because every needle drop also serves a story. It was nothing happened that was superfluous here. It's a very tightly wound movie. That's really hard to do. Like you could have easily made that opening number not really count, but you know, she used the rule of repeats, right? We're going to open on this song and this perfect day in Barbie land. We're going to show everyone what a normal, perfect day looks like so that we can circle back to it and then break it. And now we can begin our story. And this is very, I don't know, typical of a lot of films that start you in, I think this is kind of the hero's journey or the circle storytelling method where we're going to begin by showing you what life is supposed to be like before we introduce the thing, right? The distress call or the call to adventure or whatever it is. And she does that, you know, perfectly because it's so entertaining. How many films have we sat through where people do that and you don't learn anything useful? They don't really use it to its maximum potential. But every needle drop here serves an absolute purpose. And I was just really impressed. Just nothing wasted. This was a use it all, you know, effort that, yeah, I was crazy about it. I do want to hear more from you, Hannah. You said you had some other thoughts and rants or ramblings, and I want both.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Let's see. Where do I even start on this? I think it is important to talk also about the element of like men's mental health in this, because you see Ken, you're welcome. you see Ken throughout, and you know he's he's the guy you don't really want to root for, but you're like, but why? Like Ken was never like the problem when I was playing with Barbies, but like it's what he, you know, brought back from the real world. And he wasn't really problematic at first. It was once he was exposed to those things and he like soaked it all in like a sponge, like kids do. And he brought it back to Barbie Land. That's when it started to become a problem. And it's, you know, do they have space to talk about these things? Do they have support to talk about these things? Do they have room to say like, I don't, you know, I feel like I saw Ken as like a teenager in a lot of places, like that kind of boyish, like it was there was definitely parts of him and his relationship to Barbie, like you don't want it's offensive. Like she does not want to be with you. Like just this has to be like, this isn't a romance, just like be your own person. But like no one was talking to him about that, and like he wasn't talking about that until the very end. And I think that the whole concept of, you know, in the real world what the patriarchy is, and it's there's like silly elements to it, but it's all very real. It ties in in a very real way. And I think that in the dialogue between Barbie and Ken, of like Ken finding himself, was probably one of the most significant parts of the movie to me. That alone, regardless of all of the other things in the movie that point to being anti the patriarchy versus anti-man, just that dialogue alone, I think, is enough, I would say, for someone to look at that and be like, oh, okay, this is for me too. This is for me to acknowledge, like, I am someone outside of my marriage, my role, my job, my kids, my career, my like having to be this man. And what does that even mean? The fact that he like starts to cry on the bed and she's like, it's okay to cry. And it seems so silly to like to see that on screen, that someone to say that to another, like a character to say that to another character. But it's necessary because there's so many boys and kids that are raised, you know, not to, and to not cry and to not show those emotions and to not be vulnerable and to not be, to be real like that. And they are enough. And I love that. I love like Ken's story.
That's great. Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I think that's super important too. And you're right. The whole movie doesn't need to center, or like, it doesn't need to have threads of that throughout the movie. You can have one little scene of his just having this moment of being completely vulnerable and explaining his issue at the end, of him saying it's Barbie and Ken, it's not Ken, you know, and he doesn't know his place. He doesn't have a place. And as long as you identify that, then it's kind of hard to call this an anti-man movie. You know, it's like, no, he has his moment and he's able to find himself. And yeah, and this, there is a stigma, you know, with men now that you just have to be strong. And, you know, I think less nowadays. I think it's more accepted nowadays to be more emotional as a man, and it's not shunned as much as it was, you know, like, you know, a few decades ago. But still it's there, and you feel it as an aura. I mean, there's I'm a big fan of Block Party, and they have a line in one of their songs that says, being a man made me coarse when I wanted to be delicate. And I think that is really, it's really telling when you don't even know, you don't even know that that you want to be delicate, because you're taught to be strong as a man. And the word strong means physically strong to anybody, like growing up, unless you're taught that, no, it can mean emotionally strong, which can mean being vulnerable. And they give him that moment of being vulnerable at the end. And that I related, it was a very relatable moment for me, you know, because that's very much how I grew up too. And to allow him to be the villain, but then to, I guess, in one line or in one scene, get a backstory of an emotional backstory of his character, and then to also have it resolved.
Yeah.
It was just brilliant writing. It's fantastic. Yeah, good, really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved.
Go ahead, Wes.
I loved all the guys in the film, the Kins, because they're still just guys. They're just in a subordinate role. And that's really tricky to do because, so like the beach off joke, right, is it's ripe with testosterone. And so the guys aren't acting like women or feminized into this role reversal, right? It's not a gender reversal. It's a role reversal. It's guys if they'd grown up in a matriarchal society.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could watch the whole film thinking about Ken and watching how Ken's acting and just imagine, instead that's women. That's this, you're watching women, and that's an interesting way to view it, and walk away with some of these lessons and some of these ideas and thoughts. And so for Kins, they want to get physical when they're upset. Right? Ken still wants Barbie in a mannish way, even though he's feeling unempowered and unsure of himself and unconfident. And of course, Ken is a simpleton, right? Horses they're man extenders. What? It's
so random. I love it.
Good. And then, of course, like Kingdom Mojo Dojo Casa House is exactly what you'd expect to happen if a group of people were held down, bullied, forgotten, uncared for. Once they got invested in the fight, right? It becomes a toxic fight for dominance instead of equality in a way to see how can we make each other's lives better and equally contribute. And so seeing them, go through this whole roller coaster is really good. And of course they get their big dance number, which happens after they're fighting. They were fighting and then suddenly they just found unity. And it's so seamless and nonsensical, but because of the way she made it, it feels right. That's like impossible to do in film. Like how many times have I called out like that transition didn't make sense? and here I was like, yeah, I don't know why. It just does. It makes sense. It works. And that just is a credit to the directing there. And they were fighting and now they're coming together. They're holding hands, right? They don't have to be enemies after all, which again, if you're looking at that from the standpoint of this is a representation of women, is really fascinating. And when Ken says, right, we were fighting because we didn't know who we were. And it's this bigger message that is for everybody. When your identity is coming from external sources, like Hannah is saying, like whether it's being a spouse or an SO or a fixture in someone else's life or something else, right? Then you're just going to fight to keep your pedestal instead of making space for others and the life that you've built for yourself and the identity that comes from within. That's a completely different way to engage with the people around you. And it's so much less destructive. It's easy to tear things down. It's really, really hard to build things. And that's what Ken is going to have to figure out, in his journey from here, because he hasn't gotten there yet, but he's going to have to get there. Yeah, sorry, Hannah, I cut you off.
No, you didn't. You didn't. You're feeding it. It's all good. Yeah, I think flipping how you see the film highlights the way it showcases the need for empathy. The monologue being something that resonates more with women, even the elbow nudge, like to the, the significant other, the guy in the room in the theater, like she's elbowing him, for a reason. Like there is a need for that understanding and empathy that we all go through something like this type of journey, these types of struggles. And that is an everyone thing. It's not an anti anything. Yeah. It's for everyone. And that's that in the most weird and ironic way is Barbie.
And how perfect is the ending?
Yeah.
From a guy to
yes.
Hearing from a girl, like you think she's going to interview for a job and like, no, something much more important. Right. And exciting. Right. And I just love how excited she is and how like, I mean, I don't know, but how most women are just like not really excited to go to a gynecologist. Right. And but how she's just so innocent and excited that this is because she didn't have a vagina before. Yeah. Right. I just thought it was perfect.
I loved that. I think it's it was hilarious for it to be the gynecologist and nodding back to the, and I don't have a vagina. Yes, she finally does. She's a real woman. But also, it's not a job interview. It's not anything that's putting her anywhere back into that patriarchal system in the real world in any kind of way. Like, you're not, the closure is not that she's a woman and she's going to work and she's going to a gynecologist appointment. Like,
that's just
she's tending to herself in some like very necessary way that also isn't really talked about like it should be amongst women or just like in society in general. Just that topic alone. So yeah, I the ending was perfect for me.
Yeah, I thought so
the
too.
laughs in the theater are great.
And how did you guys feel about the first off, if we could just for a second talk about the acting and how Margot Robbie, well, and what's his name? I'm so bad with names.
Ryan
you know
Gosling.
This if you listen to
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. How great! Like this is not even though you're playing a doll and you're like happy with, this is not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a moment's notice, you have to go, like, she goes from happy and or just thinking to sitting on that bench talking to that woman, and then she has a tear and so anyway, so the acting is phenomenal to me. I think it's amazing, but I want to know what you guys felt or thought about the interaction with her maker. That I mean, they have a couple of scenes together, but the one where she pulls Barbie aside and they go into that just infinity screen, infinite room, which is just gorgeous, by the way. And I love how you don't question how they got there. They're just there. It's just one of those, where did the T-Rex come from moments that I love when it's done right in movies where you just kind of don't think about it. But what did you guys think about that interaction?
Me first, or what?
Yeah, you first, Hannah. You're always first.
I'm always first. Ladies first.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I saw it, so I went to see this twice in theater. The first time I saw it, I was trying not to cry so that I could just like pay attention to what was happening. The second time I definitely cried. It was just, I think that it was interesting to watch a character with such a desire to be human. And in that moment, like, makes you just realize and be very aware that you are the thing that she wants to be. And the montage of all of the flashbacks and different footage of different people and all these different places and lives, it was a very overwhelming scene, even though it was so simple and it's set up, they're just here in this infinite room. For me, it was overwhelming, like to recognize humanness. And in that part of the film, particularly just where it fell and just in the cadence of the film, I loved it. I think it was really impactful. I think as you're watching the stereotypical Barbie, I think the whole time, the first time I watched it, I was wondering what was going to become of the stereotypical Barbie, because you don't want to see her in some kind of romantic ending with Ken. That's not
Great
Barbie.
point. Yeah.
You don't want to see her. You don't really know how you want to see her end up. You don't want that. And maybe you don't want a couple of other things. And they nod specifically to not that. But to see her as she's kind of unboxing herself, so to speak, throughout the movie, want like that desire as she sits on the bench and she's crying at like just what it is to be human, but doesn't really know it yet. And then she finds that. And I think stereotypical Barbie is one to retire in many ways, and to kind of take what, like, as a girl and you're playing with a Barbie, you are the human. You want to be like the doll in this very toxic way. That stereotypical Barbie is the doll that you shouldn't want to be. It's unattainable. It's crazy. So there was something healing about watching stereotypical Barbie want to become human. And I think it was the perfect way to kind of close that off for the girls who looked at stereotypical Barbie and thought, like, I don't want to be you anymore.
Well, I love that
And
they
she
call
doesn't
her.
want to be her.
Yeah, I love that they call her stereotypical.
Yeah.
Like not normal, not
Right.
average, not whatever, not, you know, I don't know, basic, that whatever.
Yeah.
But just they call her this thing that like nobody wants to be stereotypical,
Yeah.
right? So if you give her a title where that nobody really wants to be, but she is like Margot Robbie, then it's not something to achieve. You don't achieve stereotypicality.
Yeah.
That's a word. Anyway, Wes?
Yeah. So just to linger on that for another second, like, I think this is where the pop culture references really, you know, add a layer that maybe, I don't know if people are really catching this or not, but the intro is a 2001 reference. And I'm not going to go deep into 2001, but it's interesting, right? You have these girls listlessly playing with baby dolls, right? And then what happens? A Barbie monolith appears.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls smash their dolls. And of course, one throws one up into this match cut to the Barbie title. And again, without getting into 2001, which we're going to be doing later at some point. But monoliths are a really interesting idea to inject into this story because, you know, monolithic being this idea that all things are one thing, right? Not all men are a monolith, right? If you want to take out your anger at, you know, the white men, I can't do that for you. Like, we're not a monolith. And in that exact same way, women aren't a monolith. And Barbie at the beginning appears to all these little girls as a monolith. That's the whole, you know, subversion of what's happening here. 2001 is a whole story told through the use of monoliths. And so this monolith appears at the beginning as Barbie, but at the end, she is no longer representing a monolith of women. And now instead, she represents an open-ended work in progress. And that's just a really beautiful way to help tell your story in a way that is probably going to slide by most of you. I don't know how many people have really seen 2001 in the first place, let alone, you know, can tease out some of the subtler meanings of it. But I love that. I mean, there's also, just to finish the thought, this Matrix reference that happens, you know, early on after she goes through her weird day and goes to meet Weird Barbie, and Weird Barbie gives stereotypical Barbie a Matrix-like choice, right? Heels or flats? Right?
Can I say something?
Please.
Can I say, literally 3 days before that, my wife just bought some Birkenstocks. I'm not lying. We laughed out loud so loud in the theater. I had to look around. Hopefully I didn't annoy anybody. It was perfect timing. So anyway, go ahead.
It's so good. But it's very useful, I think, to use pop culture references as a shorthand to tell a big complex story, right? We don't need in Barbie, we don't need total originality. If anything, you want the exact opposite. You want to see how all these commercial aspects fit together. And so using all of pop culture as a storytelling device is really useful because it fits the commercial side and also helps tell the story. It's a shorthand. It's a way to kind of get the audience into an idea without having to belabor, you know, any given aspect of the plot. So it's just really smart use. And I'm sure there's 1,000 other, you know, references to pop culture that I just didn't catch. I was in the theater last night, like hand was cramping. I was running out of ink. I was like, there's just too much going on here. But Ruth, my God, so Todd, if your favorite moment is the bench moment, my favorite moment is the first time she runs into Ruth. It's so peaceful. It's beautiful. And as you get to know Ruth, which is interesting, you get to know her almost through silence. Ruth is okay with imperfection and complexity and messiness. And Barbie and us, we feel okay because of that. Even though we were just in this really crazy, kooky chase sequence, and we really need to go. We got to, you know, get going and escape. We're actually okay despite all of that happening around us because Ruth's energy makes us okay. And it's a really beautiful, and I think I read that they wanted to cut that scene, and she had to really fight to keep it in there. I was like, what? No, this is everything. Not executives don't always know everything.
Get out of the way.
Put it lightly. Yeah. But I love it because later on in the film, whenever we have that moment between Ken and Barbie that you were talking about earlier, like, it's amazing because Ken is feeling upset about his place in the world. And what does Barbie do? She just listens, just like Ruth. It's this beautiful little, touch, this energy that starts to kind of seep through everyone after meeting Ruth. But of course, what is Barbie after this whole experience of confronting her actual impact on the real world? She got to live in her dreamland, Barbie land, and then got confronted with reality and was like, I can't go back. What do I do? And Ruth says humans make up ideas like patriarchy and Barbie just to deal with how uncomfortable life is. And then we die. That's what you have to look forward to now, Barbie. Because early in the film, right, she's talking about how every day is going to be a great day, the same amazing day forever and ever and ever. And now it's like, no, you're going to die now that you've experienced the apple, and it's beautiful. We fade into that montage of all the home footage of women living real lives. It's beautiful. It's real. It's melancholy. And Barbie chooses to join the real world. And I love, if you're really paying attention, in that shot for shot, transition, she goes from wearing wedges with Ruth into like Birkenstocks. She goes from heels to flats. And of course they do a nice big close up of the Birkenstocks to emphasize that. But if you're also paying to the previous scene, you'll see that she went back to heels. And so that was still part of her identity. And maybe to Hannah's point, like, maybe she's both at the end of the day. And that's cool too. If we saw another scene, maybe she's back in heels because she contains multitudes. She can be whatever she wants. Yeah, I think performance-wise, because you threw that out there as well, Todd, I loved it. I would say on the whole, I probably laughed more at Ken. Just everything he was doing. We didn't really need much out of Ken, so he got the freedom to be ridiculous. I was cracking up, not just at Ryan Gosling, but Kingsley Ben Adir. I thought
Cera.
He was amazing. That dude. Oh, and Michael Cera was hilarious too. But Kingsley, I thought he was doing all that for someone who didn't have a lot of dialogue. He was doing a lot with his physical acting. And the really cool thing is a lot of these actors, Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Kingsley, like, these are dramatic actors doing a comedy. And so I think she did a great job of utilizing their dramatic, skill set without sacrificing the comedy of the film. That's a wild line to walk because the performances are really, really big. It's all over the top. The jokes are big. The performances are huge. There's big pauses, right? The chase sequence, there's all this kind of faux running, pump the arms and legs and knees are going up to your chin. And like we do when we all play pretend, right? And that physical and that style of humor says that everything is completely safe here. There's not going to be any real threat of violence or people being hurt. You're in safe hands. But it also makes those emotional and real moments feel that much more grounded and sensitive whenever you drop all of that bigness and suddenly it's very, very intimate. And so she killed Margot Robbie. She deserves a nomination. Like, it's probably a little wild. I don't think I'll get a lot of pushback out there, but if you had said before going in, like, Barbie is going to be an Oscar qualifier, people would probably be like, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun, but let's hold the applause a little bit. But her moments whenever she really goes for it, like the breakdown after discovering Barbie Land is wrecked. That's a really, really good moment. There's all these genuine emotions that are comedic in nature, but she plays it all the way. She's fully upset. She's muffling her words. She's crying. Even if the tears don't necessarily fall, you can see it welling up in her eyes. And she just kind of gives up, right? The physical gestures. It's huge. It's so big. And And it's very, very genuine. And I love that she's letting the script do all the comedy here. She's just going to play the real emotional stakes that Barbie is feeling. And doing that, I think, really heightens the comedy, because if you can just commit to your part, the context will give the humor. But you really need to commit to being upset and frustrated because your world is disappearing. It's gone. How would you actually feel? That's how you actually feel. You fall down and you give up and you roll over. Like that's a real emotion. And that's part of the writing, of course. But Margot, pushing all the way there. It could have been tempting, I think, to play into the humor instead of just playing into the emotion. And that's great acting to me. Yeah. I'll run through a couple more notes and y'all jump in. If you want to jump in now, you're more than welcome, of course. But the last few notes I have, story and writing wise, geez, I've gone through all that, haven't I? I try to seamlessly work in my notes whenever I can. And Gloria and Sasha is one that we haven't talked about yet. And so there's the mom and daughter, aspect of this. Sasha, when she meets Barbie, has this really light pushback on Barbie being a real Barbie doll. And then she just fully buys in. She goes for it. And I love that. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the fantastical elements here. We're all playing pretend once we're asked to. That's how you play pretend. And because that's just how you play with dolls, it makes sense, right? It would be weird to actually belabor the idea of Barbie coming to life. And so we spend almost zero time at all like being confounded by this. Instead, it's just like, you're what? Okay, fine. And then we're off to it. And I love that. And Sasha as a character, and that's a great introduction to her because she's so jaded and pessimistic. And she tears Barbie apart, right? And then in the car, when they save Barbie, she's trying to explain to Barbie that the world hates men and women hate women and men hate women and it's all completely screwed. And then mom is like, well, it is complicated, but we're not doomed. And that dynamic is so critical to, the second half of the film, because Gloria decides to then take Sasha to Barbie Land because she knows Sasha needs a dose of hope, which is what Barbie is promising. An awesome world run by women who thrive and love each other. And then, of course, when it turns out Ken has completely ruined Barbie Land and it's all hopeless, just like Sasha said it was, it's Sasha who wants to save Barbie Land. She's doing for her mom what her mom was trying to do for her. It's very synergistic. It's women helping women and uplifting each other and reminding each other of hope and the goal and what we're all trying to do. And that's just a really beautiful kind of, balanced approach to, first of all, family, like a mother-daughter aspect. You don't want the mom to just kind of put her finger in her daughter's face the whole film. And having a moment where Sasha actually I get to save the day. Cool. Let's do that. What did you think about Gloria, Sasha, and of course, Gloria wanting just an ordinary Barbie, which after hearing it'll be profitable, Mattel was all excited about. And that, which also seems very Ruth to me, right? She just wants the Barbie who's okay with just existing, How about that? Yeah, what was your impression of Gloria and Sasha, Hannah?
I think I'm on the same page as you. I think I loved seeing Sasha kind of soften a little bit, but not lose her edge. I think that's very much like me in a lot of ways. It was, watching her kind of close off a little bit in the flashbacks. I think when you realize that the perspective that Barbie was like kind of peeking into the real world to try to find the person turned out to be Gloria and not Sasha. I enjoyed how they set that up a lot because it was kind of going back to what I said earlier about, girls are expected to stop that playful nature at a certain point in life. Having it be Gloria that was playing with the Barbie, whether or not, all the weird things were happening to her, like the existential things, because it was a grown woman, adult playing with the Barbie. She was still playing with the Barbie for the reasons that she was playing with the Barbie, which Sasha couldn't quite understand in that initial conversation. But then by the end of it, is understanding of why her mom held on to a lot of those things and kept those things important, and why she, like, what connection she really wanted with Sasha. And you see Sasha kind of close off, you know, her mom's coming behind her at the table. She's like hiding away, which she's her like writings. And then, you know, the mom in turn, Gloria, does that to Sasha in a way too. Like, she doesn't think that Sasha notices the drawings that she does or pays any attention. So they kind of close off from each other. And I think you tend to think, you know, the mom in those dynamics is always the one who's trying. But I think she also kind of closes Sasha off a little bit. And so they allow each other in by the end of it. And then it's Sasha who pushes Gloria to say, no, say the idea. Tell them about the ordinary Barbie, you know. And even the white savior line where she says after the monologue, and Sasha says, oh, come on, white savior Barbie. And Barbie's like, no, that was your mom. And it's funny because it's the white savior, and that's funny. Yeah. But she, you know, she's like, oh, yeah, that was my mom. That was my mom. And she kind of has, you know, that's my mom moments. And, you know, Gloria has those about Sasha, and when they decide to go back and it's Sasha's idea, and when they sing along to the Indigo Girls song together, just all of the little things that lead to, in the end, them coming to each other. A doll can do that. And that's what's crazy, because in some capacity, like, it can, and it did, and it does, and it has for many of those dynamics in real life. So it's interesting to watch that unfold in such a unique way that I haven't seen on screen before. I liked it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Todd,
she was Ugly Betty, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yes.
Yeah, which is cool. Why not? That's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect casting.
Exactly.
I feel like. But she's done a lot of stuff. She did, like, I think Dogtown and a bunch of other stuff. But so she's a great actress. I think I mean, I loved the interaction. I loved when Barbie first met say bad with names, the daughter, Sasha. First met Sasha, and Sasha just, like, basically destroys her. It's the idea of, you know, a teenage girl playing with Barbie. Like, why would I ever, you know, just, you know, I'm grown up. I'm not, you know, and then for that to get subverted was just a really, really great call out there. And I was trying to think about it, and I think the reason why the monologue kind of bothered me, or it didn't bother me, it just, like, took me out of it, was because I feel like, I don't think that it was a writing thing. I feel like there were a couple of lines that were repeated or something, and it just didn't feel right. It felt like maybe the cinematography should have changed a little bit to be more real worldy. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm not, like, trying to fix the movie or anything. It's just a shame for me, and I need to go watch it a third time. But it's just a shame to me that like the entire movie is freaking amazing and perfect in every other way, and I just have this one moment where it just doesn't feel perfect, and I don't know how. You know, it's like it's for me the monologue in Interstellar. It's like the same thing. Monologues are so hard. And this one moment just makes the movie less than perfect for me. It's 99% instead of 100, and it bothers the hell out of me. And so I just want to fix it. You know what I mean? I just want this to be absolutely perfect. And I can't do it. So then but I also don't want to bend my opinion to make it 100% at the same time.
Yeah.
But I thought that the relationship between, I think you said it perfectly, Hannah, that the daughter becomes the savior that the mother needed at times when the mother needs it. And it's such a great call out to real life, where a lot of times as parents or just as individuals, whether you're a parent or not, you need a little push. You need somebody to say, wait a minute, take a breath, look at what's in front of you. Now do the next right thing, as Elsa famously said. And then have somebody there in your corner to help push you in that direction. And sometimes it comes from someone who's quote unquote less experienced or younger or can see the world in a different way than you do because you are experienced and because maybe you're jaded from the world or something that you went through in your life. I think it's interesting. We don't really see the dad very much at all. There's like there's like 2 shots of him, I think, 2.
Yeah, 2.
Because it's not about him, you know, and that's okay. That's okay. We don't need a story or anything. He can just be there and existing and present, but he's not it's not his fault any of this has happened, but it's also not his place to fix it. And so it's not his story. It's their story together. I think you said it beautifully, Hannah. So yeah.
I also like that it's not Sasha's like her mom hasn't been her responsibility to like step in and be the savior. Like there is an opportunity there for Sasha to be the savior, but there really isn't any setup of like the daughter is the savior because she's had to be kind of dynamic.
She's chosen to be. She chose to be. Yeah, that's a great point. God, all of this in 100 minutes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's impressive. Cinematography wise, like the most 90% like is wides. And even mediums get kind of saved for these personal moments, which then means you save the close-ups for the super important intimate moments, like Margot Robbie having her existential crisis at the end. Like that's really important. And the more you hold that stuff back, the more, you know, it pays off whenever you finally use it, because now you're really in someone's space and you're able to engage with her emotions and what she's feeling. Whereas you could dilute that by going to it too often. And most of the shots are locked off or very simple dolly moves or maybe a simple crane move, because you want to make sure what's happening on stage, on screen, it's very clear. It's very easy to follow. And of course you get to show off all these cool sets. And so the depth of field is super wide, nearly, you know, infinite. And that makes sure, one, I guess it's easy to capture, but, it's bright. It's very bright. It's very friendly. I can't imagine how bright some of those lights must have been, because you want it to look bright, but then it also needs to be bright enough to light for this really deep exposure. And so, yeah, that everyone must have been half blind walking off that set, like Wizard of Oz or something. It's
and come on, set design, how cool! Well, everything is like 1/8. You know, the size, just like Barbie actually is. So the car is too small and the house is actually too small. It's so great.
It's so good. Like the set design, I love from a number of aspects. When they get to Venice Beach, like they use all these muted colors around Barbie and Ken so that they pop out more, right? And some of it's probably done in wardrobe, but I'm sure a lot happened in the color grade itself. Let's, you know, go frame by frame here and kind of dial back as much of the sky as we can. And so whenever you see Ken and Barbie, they really do stick out in the frame. It's like the sun suddenly is on the sidewalk. It's just a lot. It's a lot going on. The other thing, this is much more subtle, is in that flashback sequence when Barbie's trying to figure out where is my person? We go back to these memories with Gloria and Sasha in this house, and the house is kind of run down. The paint outside, right, is this chipped white paint, but the blue trim is absolutely pristine. It's almost like fresh coat. And I like it because it lets us get the idea of their struggles in life without entirely clashing with the film itself. And so it's a great mix of imperfection with details that still pop in a Barbie kind of way, because you're trying to find this balance of, we're going to tell the story of these people without going too far one direction or the other. They're representing reality, so we want it to feel like reality, but you can't go too far or else you lose the aesthetic of your film. And that's a really delicate dance, and just a really great job by set design and Greta, you know, directing. And of course, you know, the Mattel office is its own thing. And it's funny because you're in the real world, but it doesn't feel like the real world. And so like the lower office is all blue. The top floor is a mix of pink and blue and shades between. And the CEO is wearing this pink tie. And it's fun because you can add as many shades of pink as you want. There's still men running the company, and all these superficial elements don't change it. And you can just feel their lip service through the set design. And it's just a beautiful little flourish that you could lose. I mean, you could probably save some money by just shooting it in an office, or you could build it and you can really sell the idea. And you just feel it. You feel the implications as much as anything. Yeah. My last thought, circling back to the big opening number, when we get to the end of the day, right, of Barbie Land, which is both like real Barbie toys and also this real imaginary place in its representation of reality, right? It's this double entendre almost that she's making about Barbie Land, that, yeah, it's imaginary. This is where, you know, kids go when they play with Barbie. It's also imaginary in the way they think they represent reality. And that's just a beautiful double idea that, you know, is obviously touched on, to put it mildly. But what I also thought was interesting is you get to the end of that day and Barbie makes that big, you know, joke, the do you guys think of death? And that is a big joke. I didn't laugh. There was some laughing in the audience. For me, this is why I don't watch a lot of comedies, is because I can't handle like big on the nose humor like that. But it's a really important joke because it sets up the connection with Gloria. We got to make sure we don't lose anyone in the bigger story. And so making that moment really important, right? Where the record skips and everything stops. You need that. You need to make sure no one in the audience, from the, you know, the 6-year-old through whatever the person chewing on their popcorn and checking their phone, make sure no one loses it. Don't pick up your phones in the movie. But you got to make sure it's not forgotten as a throwaway joke or a gag, because it's actually critical to the story. And so you do need to play it up bigger. And of course it's not apparent for me immediately, but it eventually becomes obvious, like, oh, okay, I get why we had to go so big there. Even though that's, again, not my personal kind of humor, it's perfectly in tone with the film itself, and is what you want out of that moment. Yeah. So Todd has said his favorite moment. I've said mine. Hannah, I don't think we've heard what your favorite moment is, if you have one.
Oh God. I feel like I have many. I think, and maybe the dialogue between Barbie and Ken, just to say a different one that I have touched on. I appreciate that one for what it is, and I think it kind of encompasses what I hope a lot of people who are a little closed-minded to this film kind of look at that. And also Midge.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering if we were going to address Kate McKinnon.
I will just quickly.
No, Midge is the pregnant one.
Midge is the pregnant one. That's right.
No, Midge is the pregnant one.
Oh my God.
Weird Barbie is great. Love Weird Barbie. Weird Barbie is fantastic. Midge is the Weird Barbie. I don't know if you ever have seen pregnant Barbie Midge in real life. No. Let me just say, I've heard a lot of opinions on why that's like a bash or whatever, but pregnant Barbie is effing weird. Okay, she's weird. She is weird. You don't want that doll. It's very strange. It was discontinued for a reason. It's all kinds of odd. Okay,
why would you want a 5-year-old little girl playing with a? Like, come on.
You don't. And also, like, the Barbie is all the same, right? The Barbie's the same. Then the belly is the only thing that changes. That in itself, we can just talk about the fact that just shouldn't be a thing, because that's unrealistic, and it's crazy to think that a woman is just gonna like, and then she's back to herself.
So I did watch it, like a video of someone actually you doing it, and then the stomach goes flat.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah.
Yes.
Great point.
So we're pregnant Barbie. We're
My
just going to
favorite-
go with, for all reasons. Yes, she should have been discontinued. It's not a bash on women who choose to have children. Obviously, one of the main characters is a daughter of a woman who has had a daughter. So we're not
Exactly.
She needed to go.
My favorite little throwaway joke Barbie moment was the Proust Barbie. I was beside myself. I started laughing, and then I was like, wait, maybe did I hear that right? Proust Barbie? Maybe they said something else. And then I was like, wait, no, but this is Greta Gerwig. Of course it's Proust Barbie. And I just was out of it for like 30 seconds running that joke through my head, processing it because it was just so out of the blue and amazing. So.
Yeah. And yes, Kate McKinnon was fantastic. Like,
God,
absolutely perfect. The splits. Every time she did the splits, I burst into laughter every single time because, I'm sorry, as a boy, that's what I do to all my dolls. The first thing is I make them do the splits. Whether it's a He-Man, G.I. Joe, Barbie, it doesn't matter. And so she's like permanently in the splits. It's just fantastic. I think that one moment where they all hide at some point,
she's
just like,
splitting on the wall.
It's just, I lost it. I just lost it. It was perfect.
That's what happens when you do the splits on the Barbie and then you throw it at something and it just stays. It just stays like that. And now it's never going back. So
good.
Oh, nice. Well, Todd, final thoughts, notes, observations?
No, I think that we said it all. I don't have any other things to say. I'm just really thankful that Hannah has joined us and to get that perspective and to hear her thoughts there. It's just it's refreshing, and I think it also kind of, let's be honest, we're two dudes talking about a movie that's very much focused on women and everything.
How
and so
dare you, sir?
Yeah, I think it's important to have that point of view, and so thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having
Hannah,
me.
final thoughts, anything you haven't touched on that you want to cover?
I've heard criticisms of like Mattel profiting, so like the way that they will profit so largely from this, but I have also seen and heard Greta and Margot going to them and them having all of these flags and concerns of like, oh, we can't do all of this long list of things, we need to stop doing the things that we're considering doing, and basically there were so many that they couldn't do anything about it and they just kept going anyway. And I think it's critical in the ways that it needs to be. Maybe it holds Mattel accountable to be a little bit more diverse and acknowledge that along the journey of Barbie, there have been many mistakes and there's a lot to learn from. And consumerism and capitalism is always going to be a problem. So buy a doll if you want. And if it's Barbie, it's at least going to be better now, hopefully. So.
Yeah, nice. Well, that brings us to the recommendations. Todd, what are you going to recommend this week?
So I don't really have anything that has anything to do with this, to be honest, but I did watch recently a thing on Netflix. I'm a big cyclist. I love cycling. And so I'm going to recommend, there's a new documentary on Mark Cavendish, one of the greatest Tour de France riders of all time. He's matched Merckx's record of, I think it's 34 stage wins in the Tour de France, which is like literally impossible to get. And he's gone through a lot. He's diagnosed with a disease that makes you chronically fatigued. And for someone who does something incredible, like finishes Tour de France, it's pretty incredible. So anyway, it's called Mark Cavendish, Never Enough. And it's a documentary on Netflix. That's what I'm going to recommend, which, sorry, it has nothing to do with Barbie, but that's just the way that it is. Sometimes I see something and I want to tell people to go watch it. So it's interesting. Nice.
Hannah, did you bring a recommendation?
I didn't, but I'm going to think of one now.
All right. Well,
I think
you chew on it and I will throw mine out and then we'll come back to you. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence. Like, there's a book I read called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow that I thought was really good. But I'm going to recommend a podcast. It's called Open to Debate. And it's just debates for the most part. Like, every once in a while, it's just a conversation. But what I love about it is it's good faith debate. And they make a really big point about listening and not, doing this thing. I don't watch mainstream news, shows or whatever, MSNBC or Fox. Like, it's all, they create more problems than they're actually there to cover. And that's so frustrating. And so I think if more people engaged in like good faith debates where you're actually listening to what someone else is saying and then responding to that instead of straw manning it, and fighting against something that no one ever said in the first place, it's so much more, useful and gets us to a place of understanding and mutual respect, I think. And so open debate does that. They take a topic du jour or something old and make it fresh again. But it's just a really good job of good faith discussions where you might tune in and say, obviously I'm on the for side or the against side. And then through the course, you actually have to listen to other ideas. And that's what I think I find really, really valuable is every once in a while, I'm pretty gray area. Like, you're not going to be able to pin me down on much because I'm pretty, open to ideas and different things. But sometimes I'll walk into an episode and it's like, yeah, obviously it's going to be this. And then, but I'm forced to listen to ideas that I don't agree with. And in that way, I think I expand my borders just a little bit more. And that's the stuff that I find really valuable. So it's a podcast called Open to Debate, formerly called Intelligence Squared. And so some of the older episodes probably have some of that branding, but yeah, Open to Debate podcast. Nice. Cool. All right, Hannah, what do you got?
Okay. So like contrary to this concept of something a little more in depth, I am going to also recommend a podcast. It's called Ologies with Alie Ward. Have you heard of this? You're nodding your head. Yeah. I sometimes, especially with my recent schedule, I like to have something that I'm receiving this knowledge in a very casual way. And she covers all of the ologies. Different episodes are on, different ologies. Penguinology, for example, is like a made up ology by this person who studies penguins. But she talks with experts on different topics and just, what they research and why they study it and little factoids. It's one of those fun, like, adult learning podcasts that doesn't feel like work necessarily. It's very, very casual listening. I like to turn it on in the car every now and again. Really, the podcast that I listen to the most, though, is Pestle, but
that's what I was waiting for. There you go.
But they're already listening to this. So that's not a recommendation. But Ologies with Alie Ward. Yeah.
Awesome. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to dive into the HBO limited series Chernobyl. And we'll see what that's all about. It's a feel-good story of the year where everything
works out perfectly.
Yeah. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review, subscribe, leave us a note. If there's something you want us to talk about, things you find interesting. You can do that on this episode at thepestlepodcast.com/Barbie, where you can also find all the ways that we can get in touch with Hannah, see some of her work, hire her. She is available locally in Georgia and also internationally, I'm sure, if you asked her politely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where can we find more from you, Hannah?
Hannah-Hartman.com. I guess you guys can spell that out in the show notes. They can click that. That's my website. So inquiries can come through there. I started an Instagram separate from my personal account just for my photography. It is still a baby Instagram, a little seedling. So my website's the best place, I think.
Nice. We will link both of those in the show notes. So I ask everyone to go check those out. She's a talented photographer who does a lot of great work, both, on the product side, but also candid, casual, make you feel like the most beautiful person in the room as you are. So check all that out at thepestlepodcast.com/Barbie.
Thank you.
And our quote of the day is from Hedy Lamarr. I must quit marrying men who feel inferior to me. somewhere there must be a man who could be my husband and not feel inferior. Who's Hedy Lamarr? I don't know. Am I ignorant?
So Hedy Lamarr is from way back in the day. She was like an actor as well as an inventor. And in fact, we're probably all using something that Hedy Lamarr actually patented like ages ago. She invented frequency hopping, which is what we use in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, as well as probably a lot of other stuff. She was a really, really smart person. And you know, for better or worse, she was also a really beautiful person. And so I don't know that society really appreciated her intelligence as much as it probably could have. But just hearing the way she talks about, you know, marriage is, you know, pretty funny because marrying up is what men say they want until they actually sometimes marry up. And so like Todd, you married up and
how dare you, sir? You're right.
But
yeah.
you know, you have no problem being married to a doctorate, right? Like she knows a thing or two, and I've never seen you hesitate to be like, yeah, you need to ask Jenny. Like that's not my bag. And so I love this concept of you know, sometimes guys, like, that's my goal. Like, I want to marry someone smarter, more successful, not to take care of me, but to challenge me and also champion me. That's what I want out of life is, I don't know, a journey with someone, not for someone, and certainly not as baggage to someone else. That's the beautiful thing. Yeah. What do you make of Hedy Lamarr, Hannah?
I love that. That's great. just find a guy that's enough. I don't know.
My gosh, that's so perfect. Can we end the podcast on that?
Yes, please.
And scene. Awesome. Well, great. That's fantastic. I could talk ad nauseum on that, but I'm not going to because Hannah, you've just ended the podcast on a perfect note. Thank you, Hannah, so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have any kind of suggestion, please let us know. But please share us with your friends and review us and subscribe. All that stuff helps a ton. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Hannah.
Go watch some movies.
You really